we're on an extraordinarily dangerous path of escalation between Russia and the United States. People who aren't looking too closely easily can accept the official narrative that, that Putin invaded unprovoked and the guy's a madman and we have to defend freedom. And the newspapers are so unbelievably without analytical edge that it's easy to get completely pulled into this. This is kind of the mainstream story. Oh, how did we get here? We got here because the United States just can't keep its goddamn nose out of anyone's backyard. And we kept pushing NATO enlargement. And I was there 32 years ago as advisor to Gorbachev and then advisor to Yeltsin and advisor to Kuchma, first president of independent Ukraine. And I was an advisor to Yatsenyuk just after the 2014 events. So I've watched this pretty close up for 32 years. And I think the US is the provocation. We think that weapon systems and sanctions and fighting will wear down Putin or get him overthrown, and something will change and Russia will go home because they realize that this is not worth it for them. And Russia's view is we're not going to be defeated. I don't understand what anybody really has in mind other than continued escalation. Russia has 1,600 active nuclear warheads and 6,000 warheads in total. So I don't understand what our idea is. And again, when I speak of our, it's not mine, it's not yours, I think. It's our government's. And I don't even know who's really responsible for this, but it's a very narrow group and it has almost nothing to do with the American people, and no one's been asked about it, and no one's been informed about it, and no one's been told about it. And yet here we are near the brink of nuclear war. And we are near the brink of nuclear war. That's true. People are scared and should be scared. And by the way, every day when I read someone say, we're not going to be intimidated by this, I say, what the hell do you know? We're all going to be incinerated if you get this wrong. It is absolutely true, by the way, that we said if you disband the Warsaw Pact, we will not use the occasion to move NATO to the east. And it was absolutely explicit. Now, since our government lies about everything, the narrative is, oh, we never promised, which is not true. And there's a whole vast documentary record of the US promising no enlargement. Well, of course, as soon as the Soviet Union went away, we thought it was a juicy opportunity to enlarge NATO, and started with Poland, Hungary, Czech Republic, 1999, and then George W. Bush Jr. added 7 more countries, 3 in the Baltics, so 3 right on Russia's border, Bulgaria and Romania, which is Russia's Black Sea region, and Slovakia and Slovenia. And we continue NATO expansion. And in 2008, Bush said, now we'll go to Ukraine and to Georgia. To my mind, this was just absolutely the most provocative thing we could do, because now we're pushing NATO right up against Russia's core security concerns. Many European leaders told me in 2008 how dangerous this was and how much they were against it, but the US calls the shots. In 2014, the pro-Russian president was overthrown. And I was there on the ground soon afterwards, and I know that the US played a direct role in the overthrow. And the Russians call it a coup. Russians say, look, you overthrew the president friendly to our country. We don't want you anywhere close to our borders. And I can tell you, all over the world, people basically agree with what I'm saying, which is, yeah, this is a war about NATO enlargement. And if it isn't, we should prove that. We should say, okay, we won't enlarge NATO. Now let's see if you stop the war. If you don't, then it exposes this isn't about NATO enlargement. This is about your empire building. Then you get the whole world on side. But right now, the whole world isn't on side. I'm not on side, but a lot of the rest of the world's not on side because they believe this is a proxy war between the US and Russia. At the end of 2021, Putin put forward security demands to the White House. At the core of them was don't expand NATO. I called the White House at the end of 2021 to beg them, negotiate. We shouldn't be expanding NATO anyway, negotiate. And I was told, no, we have an open door policy, which means that anyone that wants to join NATO can join NATO. And I said, that's crazy. This isn't a right, this is a threat to another country. This isn't about rights, this is about the effects on the neighbors. And I said, do you believe that Mexico has the right to have a military alliance with China? I don't think so. But that's what you say about Ukraine, that they have the right to have a military alliance with the United States. I said, in any event, they can ask, but it's not prudent for us to do it. Well, the White House refused any negotiations. So, ladies and gentlemen, to my mind, we've been stirring the pot the whole time. Putin invaded on February 24th, and we've been escalating ever since. And the last week has been filled with news stories, these casual stories of will he or won't he use nuclear weapons, as if, we're trying to predict the outcome of the Super Bowl. It's bizarre to me. I've just never seen anything so reckless, and I have no confidence in the US government, no confidence in what we're doing to head this off, because they're dead set on doing whatever it takes. That's what they say all the time, whatever it takes to win this, for Ukraine to win this war. And since I don't think Russia's going to lose this war, to my mind, we're on a recipe of continued escalation. And I'll stop with the reading. I want to read you one set of words from my favorite speech of modern times by an American president, which is President John F. Kennedy's speech. And Kennedy gave this speech on June 10, 1963, to convince Americans that it was possible to make peace with the Soviet Union, which was not a conventional view. How can you make peace with the commies? And Kennedy said, we have to check our own attitudes. They're human beings. They have the same desires as we do. And they want to live in peace also. And so if the agreement is mutually satisfactory, it can be mutually observed. Very, very wise words by President Kennedy. Kennedy said something that I really, really want to emphasize. He said, and it's the most important statement for this moment. He said,
and above all, while defending our own vital interests, nuclear powers must avert those confrontations which bring an adversary to a choice of either a humiliating retreat or a nuclear war. To adopt that kind of course in the nuclear age would be evidence only of the bankruptcy of our policy or of a collective death wish for the world.
So what Kennedy is saying is, you never, with a nuclear adversary, make them choose between a humiliating defeat and a nuclear war. But that's exactly what we're proposing to do right now with Putin. Not only that, every day Zelensky tries to humiliate Putin, not tries to solve a problem, but to humiliate Putin. I can't stand listening to Zelensky, I'm telling you, because maybe I can understand, although I don't really understand. If I were next door to Russia, I'd have a different language, because I wouldn't want to be nuked either. But what he's doing in terms of provocation is extremely, dangerous, and we're playing the game because we're saying whatever they do, that's all right. They have to win. I believe that they're the ones shelling the nuclear power plant. I'm absolutely almost sure. I think, by the way, just to add to the discussion, that we are the ones that blew up the Nord Stream pipeline. I'm pretty sure that was a U.S. action. When I said it on television a couple of days ago, they took me off the air immediately because you're not allowed to say this on U.S. television. But it's pretty much conventional wisdom in other parts of the world, even by reporters that don't write it in their paper. If you talk to them privately, they say, of course it's the U.S. Who else would do it? Who else could do it? Who else had an incentive to do it? I think Russia's idea was we can scare Ukraine into neutrality. That was the original idea of the invasion. And I think it was a desperate move, but I think the motivating factor of the move was that the US was heavily arming Ukraine and threatening Russian security. And Russia could not get US attention. This is the basic point. We treat Russia like shit, if you'll excuse me, which is they put forward negotiating demands and we say, no interest. Why should we talk to you? You're a fourth-rate power. You're delusional. We're the superpower. And that, I think, is the basic point. Then we say there's no one to negotiate with after we say we're not negotiating. But if you don't know if there's someone to negotiate with till you negotiate with them. And by the way, the Russians honor agreements. We do too sometimes. We break them a lot also. The Ukrainians broke agreements. They absolutely would not implement the Minsk agreements. So the Russians say, look, how can we negotiate? You lie to us, you cheat. Britain, France and Germany were supposed to be the guarantors of the Minsk II agreement. When the Ukrainians say, we don't like this agreement, then France and Germany remain silent because they're on the Western side. And our division of the world into the pure good and the pure evil is phony. And remember something really interesting, another one of these mysteries. In mid-March, there was a flurry of statements by Russia, Ukraine, and Turkey, which was mediator, that the two sides had come close to an agreement and that they actually exchanged papers. And I spoke with a very, very senior Russian official about this who described this to me. And actually, the Ukrainians put forward the idea of neutrality. This immediately went to Putin. Putin said, let's draft a peace agreement around this. The Russians did. They put it back to Zelensky, and then Zelensky said, no, that's not what I meant. And the strong rumors, which I believe, are that the United States and UK said to Zelensky, hell no, you want us to back you? We're not backing neutrality. And that this was a complete change, and it was the end of the negotiations. So I think the US has been completely uninterested in the negotiations. That week, Biden flew to a NATO meeting in Brussels and declared this is going to be a long war. And then he went from Brussels to Warsaw and said that man can't stay in power. And then a few days later, Lloyd Austin said our goal is to weaken Russia. So I think it's US policy not to have a negotiated solution. Suppose we negotiated something and that it was satisfactory, but then Russia violated it. Then we would be in no worse situation than we are right now, but we would at least have the whole world know that we went the extra mile to try to find peace and the other side violated it. And that, to my mind, is the right approach. The right approach is to try for peace.